Best Book Pits podcast brings you Michael Francis, author of the book 59 Prime, A Journey of Faith, Challenges, Hope, and Triumph. Michael, thank you for being on the podcast.
Michael, thanks for having me. Looking forward to sharing my story, and thank you for being patient. We've had a couple hiccups, but it's happening.
No problem. Now, for my audience who don't know you, this is going to be a different one. So, Michael's the author of the book 59 Prime, and it's a journey of his story, a very emotional story as well, and quite a lengthy one too. So, we're going to jump straight into it. Now, for my audience, obviously, who don't know you, Michael, I want you to go back to your earliest years and your roots. Chapter 1, My Roots. Tell me, who is Michael? Where did you grow up? And how did it all unfold for you in your early years?
You know that's a great place to start because that is the foundation. So I was born a military bred. I was one of 4 boys that were born into a family of loving parents, and I was the third, if you will. But we were close within age, so all of us were born within a 5-year span. So we were close. Our parents smothered us with love. We lived in, we were born in the late 50s and early 60s. There was a lot of issues going on with civil rights and things, but we were pretty much immune to that because of our parents. They always taught us to treat people with respect, see people for who they are, and watch people's actions versus their words. So we were blessed to grow up in a loving household.
Yeah, awesome. And talk to me about your brothers. Are they Elton, Tony, and Brian? Is that correct?
Yeah, we are. We are probably as close can get. So one of the things, I married my wife, and she's one of 5 girls. But when we were dating and we would get together, after a while, her sisters would say, "Can you guys really quit hugging and kissing on each other? Here we are, grown men," and I'd say absolutely not. And so we grew up, we had each other's backs, very different, but the same. I tell people that we are cut from different parts of the same cloth. We're all grounded. We always could find each other around each other. An example is within the last 2 weeks, I have met my brothers at my parents' house spontaneously 3 times. So we've been there. One comes, the other one says, "Hey, I'm on my way," and we really understand and at our stage now to really get back to our parents. They invested heavily in us and allowed us to blossom, and so we look for opportunities to get together.
Yeah, I want to sort of go even back further to your parents and how they sort of grew up and you talk in the book and you unpack about segregation, and I wanted you to touch on sort of, how hard it was for your parents to grow up in the small town in Texas.
Yeah, so the small town is the big metroplex of Giddings, about 5,000 people now. So my parents met back in 1950, I think 1955. Or so. So my dad had grew up out. They both grew up out in the outskirts of town. Again, it was completely segregated then, so they were in Black communities. But they met through my dad's sister. Actually introduced my dad to my mom. My dad had joined the military service and was stationed in Arizona. He came back for leave, and my mom happened to be at his mom's house talking to my aunt. And he asked my aunt, "Who is this?" And he said, "Oh, that's little Charlie Jackson's little girl, Charlesetta." And he said, "That's her." And before he left, in 17 days, they were engaged, and they have now been together now for 65 years of marriage. So they grew up and really took us on adventures. Being in the military has its advantages. One of them is it really supports and makes you get out and mingle with people because you're going to be plopped into different locations and you have to make friends. And we did that. One of the things that we experienced, I learned later in life, is we were stationed in Idaho and would come home to Texas for our summers. And it was about a 2,000 mile road trip, and we would just absolutely look forward to it, not only seeing the relatives, but the drive itself. Our parents made sure we stopped along the way. My mom fried up a bunch of chicken, and it tastes better 2 or 3 days. So we were on the road, and we would sleep in the car, and we just thought that was the best. My little brother, Brian, who's in the book, he would crawl up into the back and sleep in the window, and the other three of us would sleep in the back seat. My mom and dad would be in the front. Well, it was about 20 years ago, I was sharing and talking to Dad about how much that meant to us. And that's when he said, son, he said, we're really honored and proud that you enjoyed it and recalled it. He says, what you didn't know is even despite I was in the military and had my badge and everything, we weren't allowed to stay in any hotels. So we had no choice, but that was none of your doing. And we were not going to expose you to that. We wanted you to grow up and not be jaded by those kinds of experiences. So that's probably one of the most powerful ones.
Yeah, I read that in the book, and that was super touching. And it's hard to understand now, looking back, that actually existed and probably still exists in some parts of the world as well. So thank you for sharing that story. It was very powerful. And you've got so much love for your siblings and your parents too. And you talk in the book about sort of your unique DNA strands that allowed you to, and I'll read it, sort of intuitively throttle up and down to meet any moment like your mother. And number two, remain calm, stay grounded, be logical, and keep things in proper perspective like your father. But talk to me also sort of about some of the most valuable traits about your parents that you put in the book. About your mum?
I started a journey of ancestry about 10 or 15 years ago. My wife had undertook it, and as I started piecing together some of the puzzles and the different aspects of my DNA, I learned things like there's a reason why that me and about 18 of my cousins have a real strong aptitude towards finance, accounting, numbers. We're all teachers. We're all either work in the profession, and my great grandfather was a professor. His father did numbers. I have that. So there is some truth to the DNA and how it flows. I tell people that, I'm really tough to beat in terms of DNA. My mom is a very, very loving, caring, grounded, spiritual person. So I have that within me, but I also have the structure from my dad. He was 20 plus years in the military, and he worked on airplanes and did that. And he led teams. And so he was very, very businesslike, if you will, in terms of, understanding how to treat people, how to be a leader. He really stressed the importance to all four of us, the importance of integrity, your word, and that is what defines you even when you're not there. So I have that from him. I have a softer side from my mom, and I tell people that, hey, I'm built for success, and I'm blessed, and I know it. But I'm pretty tough to beat because I've used both of those in the corporate settings that I've been in. So I've worked for 4 Fortune 500 companies in 4 different industries. I've worked for the federal government. I worked for the local government. And I've just been blessed to have a career where after I started, I didn't have to apply for a job. I was selected by people who knew me or pulled to different companies and moved around because of not only the what in terms of what I brought to the table, but the how I did it. And I think that's probably another blessing and a skill that is probably not talked about, but I think it's more highly valued. And I talk about it a lot in the book. It's often it's not the what, it's the how, and it's not what happens to you, it's how you respond.
Yeah, you've got so much to unpack in the book, and I like how you structured it, where you started with the roots and the foundations and what made you who you are, and some of the DNA characteristics and the things that you learned from not only your parents but your grandfather, who was a professor as well. I'd like to read a quote from the book as well, if you may. So I'll go through it. You talk about, I'm aging, so that means my parents are aging too, and the world is aging. While I remember this bits and pieces of my family history, there was no cohesive, validated, or formal family manuscript for current or future reference. I should have documented or archived conversations instead of just listening to my grandparents, aunts, and uncles. Unfortunately, as each generation transitions and leaves this existence, so do more intricate pieces of an already complex and scattered puzzle. Great, great storytelling. Talk to me about your wife. You write highly of her in the book. Your incredible wife. What does she mean to you?
She means the world to me, I will tell you right now, if I get choked up during this, it's because of the love I have for her, and I would not be the person who I am now, and that's not, I'm not just saying that. So I met her 38 years ago when we at a college, which is now Texas State University. I arrived a year earlier than her, and so my brother Elton was there at the time. He was there on a track scholarship, and so he kind of pulled me into the reins and was kind of showing me the campus and things. And he actually met her and introduced her to me at the time as a joke. And I looked at her and then just thought she was incredibly beautiful, but I was not in the right headspace. A small town boy going to college, so I was probably a little rambunctious. But we started dating about 2 years after we met, when I realized, hey, look, I need to focus and get out of school. And I came back one night. I was walking around the campus just getting my thoughts together, and I bumped into her, and that's when we started talking. And I realized, wow, she's beautiful inside and out, and she is she shined such a bright light on a lot of things that I were in the dark about myself, about life, and she gave me a different perspective. So she is an artist, and she has a fine arts degree from the Southwest Texas State University, and we quickly became known as the artist and the nerd, if you will, and it was a term of genuflection that I'm so proud of. When I met her, I tell people that I always thought there were just 8 crayons in the thing, but now after meeting her, I know that there's 64. There's fuchsia, there's teal, there's seafoam, all these things. So she opened my eyes up to not only that, but also even a lens on people. I remember telling her a story, and I started by saying it was this white guy was doing this, and that, and I went on this and we were talking. It was a very jovial story, and she listened intently. And then at the end of it, I said, "Well, what do you think?" She says, I don't see whether the reference to his race was relevant." And I thought, she's right. Why did it added no value. So it just raised my antenna on those kinds of issues. And I carry a lot of things that she has said. I put in the book that 95% of the time she's right. And I will quickly tell her, but there's we have this kind of joking thing now where she'll smile at me and look at me, and she says, "Of course I'm right. That's why I'm the wife." And so we are one, and we have endured every single vow, sickness and health, forsaking all others, rich or poor. The only one that we have left is now to death do us part, and we are one. As we speak, I'm here at my father-in-law's house, my 90-year father-in-law. So in the book, I also talk about the passing of my mother-in-law, who was an elegant woman, and I've known them for now over 40 years, and she passed, and it's been a ripple effect through her family, which is me. And so I spend a lot of my time with her and her father, because I love them both, and I love her, and I love her family. And I've always said that actions speak louder than words. And so what I'm doing now is that. But she's an incredible artist. She's had 2 solo shows. If you're ever in Austin, Texas, and you ever go to the W Hotel, which is essentially located and prominent, if you check in behind the check-in desk, there's a picture that they bought, and it's called Marla, and it's Janelle's work. The owners of the W bought it, and they also bought another one that resides in their house. And her work is now displayed across the U.S. in about 73 different homes. So she's modest, and it's probably going to be upset that I'm talking about her, but I love her, and she won't pat herself, and I do, and I would be nothing without her.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, and I like how you shared so much in the book as well. But the love for you too is it's next level. It's really nice and humbling to read a love story between a husband and wife, and the amount of love for you for her grows from you every day. It seems like as well. I want to sort of circle back to something you said about which was race, and you sort of unpack and talk a bit about it in the book as well. And I'll just read a paragraph as well because this book is super powerful. So those listening, we're going to get into some of the travels and troubles and hiccups that Michael goes along the way because this book is a memoir of his life. And before we jump into race, what does 59 Prime actually mean, Michael?
So 59 Prime and really stands for where I was when I started this journey. So a year ago, about this time, I turned 59 on January 22nd. I had started the new year off saying, "Hey, I'm going to get myself ready for 60." And so I went and did a body cleanse. I started working out more, and I had actually dropped about 16 or 18 pounds during January before the storm hit in February. So I was doing it 59, thinking I was going to be in my prime. And so that kind of stuck with me. And in February, when I started going through the medical things and thoughts started coming to me, it started first with just stickies. I would just be inundated with different quotes and things coming to me, and I was jotting them down. And I started that process on February 1st. And then I did a hard stop on March 31st because I wanted to start with the roots. And so I just said, hey, look, I got all these thoughts and I jotted them down. And it just so happened that period of time was also 59 days. And then the kind of play on words, if you will, 59 being a prime number. And so within 3 weeks of, in February, I had the title for a book that I never knew I was going to be writing or never thought was possible. And it just led from there. My background is HR and finance, and I've had a pretty good career. One of the things I'm noted for is my ability to do, spreadsheets, Excel, bring things together, data. So the possibility of me writing a book, maybe not so much. Maybe doing a spreadsheet, that's in my strike zone. So this came to me I realized quickly as a gift. And so I just was, for once, smart enough not to challenge it, dissect it, analyze it. I just wrote it down and I started writing stickies. They would come to me. I'd go down and make a sandwich and it would be 30 minutes later and Janelle would come down, "Where are you?" And she'd come down and there would be Post-it notes all over the place. And I told her, "I don't know what's happening, but I got to get it out." And I'm so glad I did.
Yeah, I can really see that the book actually came out for you and it was just a growth and something that you birthed. So congratulations on the birth of this book. But yeah, let's circle back to race because you talk about it in the book and I want to go through the chapters. So I'll just read a short paragraph from the book if you don't mind. So you write, "So under the watchful eye of our slave owners, we developed our way to communicate, celebrate and commiserate African American history, gospel music, the divine providence were critical pillars that supported our plight. Gospel music evolved into one of the primary mediums for us as a people to express our sorrow, hope, resiliency, pain, suffering, and faith. Singing was one of the few freedoms my ancestors had permission to do without fear, intimidation, or retribution." Talk to me about gospel music.
So it's played like I said, a pivotal role for me growing up. Sunday and being in the church was almost the way that we re-energized ourselves. We had our own space, and we had the right to do whatever we wanted within the confines of that. And it was a way for us to come together, reunite, reinvigorate, and revalidate our bonds to go face the week. And it was the one place where the race or the prejudice could not come in and infect. And to this day, it still remains so. And so a lot of the spirituals that have evolved over the centuries, they came out of pain and suffering that was much deeper and much more profound than what we're experiencing now, which is still quite a bit. But the issues, the challenges that I had with researching my DNA are real for all African Americans. We cannot go back into the 1880. If you can get into 1830, then you're doing great, because we were property then. And so a lot of that was, we were followed along with cattle. And so we lost a lot of our identity. We lost a lot of our ability to go back and trace things. And that carried over, that going through that time, the sadness, the harshness, it taught us as a people, unfortunately, to keep things to ourselves, to deal with things, to internalize things, but not to talk about them. And that has stifled, that's also served, unfortunately, to stifle the history, the oral history, because some of the things were so atrocious that they were just too tough for my ancestors to talk about. And so the oral history kind of either was just kind of shut down, or didn't exist. So um, all of that flows through and comes through in the gospel music. And if you see in the chapter My Thoughts, there is a musing or a writing that I did about the importance that, and I actually list different songs by different people for different things, whether it be death, whether it be celebration, whether it be hope. And those are meaningful and real things that helped us and still help us today to do to evolve and to stay the course. And all of those are aspirational, and unfortunately still remain aspirational, and we have not achieved those, so we still hang on to those.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And yeah, I know you unpack it, going over the years and decades of the story as well. And one of the things that really stuck out at me as well, you wrote in the book, there's a strong correlation between denial and reoccurrence. History ignored is history repeated. Take a look around if you need proof. Talk to me about the story of getting pulled over. That was a real emotional one for me, what I read. If you like to share that story of just being pulled over randomly, driving your Lexus, as you said, you're a management HR consultant and work for Fortune 500 companies, and your resume is quite long and comprehensive as well. But talk to me about that day, just being pulled over randomly.
Yeah, and that one, that was I believe that was the fourth time that I had been pulled over for no reason. Found afterwards, and that was pretty recent. I think that was in 2015 or so. I had just moved back to Texas and had spent a lot of time. I took some time off, and we bought a house in Austin, and my parents lived about an hour away, and so I would go down there occasionally to Giddings. And it's leaving the urban life and going on the rural roads, you just encounter it. And I say in the book, it's really not about race or police officers in general. It's just the luck of the draw who you get, and it really means that. So I got pulled over as I was driving to my parents' house, and I pulled over, and I just go through, and in the book I articulate the kind of protocols that I go through in the conversation. But in a nutshell, I was asked, the typical, let me see your driver's license, registrations, and all that, and I did. But there's always a subtle kind of checklist of things that we do. First thing I did was put my hands on my steering wheel when he came, and I said, "Hey, they're in the glove compartment. Can I get it?" And I get it. Give him permission to get it. And he asked me the series of questions. Among them, do you have any drugs? In which no, sir. Do you take any drugs? No, sir. Do you have any firearms? No, sir. The one that got me it was almost as if he was going through a checklist, but the one where I just really just froze is when he asked me, "Are you a professional athlete?" And that is just one that is, I don't know if that's normal protocol, but to me, that was just kind of saying, look, you're not a drug dealer. You don't take drugs. You're driving this nice car. So you must be a professional athlete. And I, it was just humiliating. And in the book, I write about how I was just sitting there with my hands on the wheel, and he leaves and steps back and runs some more information. He comes back and he taps my window with with my information, and he said, "Here you go." And he just still looking at me, very demeaning. And he looked at me. He takes one more look over the passenger's seat. He looks down the side glove compartment. He kind of steps back a little bit. He looks one more glaringly in the back seat, takes one more look, and then it's almost insult and the injury. He says, "Oh, you're good to go. You be safe out here. You be safe out here, because a lot of people are out here." And I'm just thinking in my mind, what is going on? What is going on? This is not normal. And fortunately, I have a pretty good demeanor, and I kept thinking, be quiet, be still. People, this could turn sideways quickly. And it's just unfortunate that those kinds of situations exist there. There's multitudes of them, but that's one of them in the book. There's more. I wrote one about called Departure Ritual that also talks about how I leave my mom and dad's, and the process that my mom go through, where she sits at the doorway and waits. I get in the car, I look over and mouth, "I love you." I can see her saying, "Jesus, cover him and keep him." And we've been doing that ever since I was 19. So more than 40 years we've been doing that, and I didn't realize it because it's just something that I have to do to stay alive, and for us to have that moment of solitude and trust between a mother and son.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. And then there was a real touching story, and I know you will elaborate a little bit more in the book from it. But yeah, it's hard. But when you said professional athlete, it did take me back to your high school, university days in Texas with the 400 meters. So if you want to unpack that there, talk to me about your university days and how you sort of unfolded and turned your MBA into finance, accounting, human resources, and Fortune 500 companies. Talk to me about your professional life through there, Michael.
Wow, that's great. Takes me back to many years and many pounds ago. But yeah, I grew up in the Francis boys in Giddings were forced to be reckoned with from a track standpoint. So all of us went to state. All of us have medaled in state. My oldest brother Tweety, who Elton Francis, we called him Tweety, because he looked like a Tweety bird. He was the most natural talented of all of us, and he was the first. He was the oldest, and he won state in the 200 meters back in 1977. And he went on to have a collegiate career, and he was a world-class athlete. He actually qualified for the Olympic trials in 1980, and that was the year that we boycotted it. So he didn't have a chance to participate, but he went on at Texas State. He held the 100 meters and 200 meter record for almost 40 years. It was just broken recently. So he was way ahead of his time. But us together, we were all pretty fast and competitive. So I finished high school at the state track meet. I got second in 200 meters, and I ran a leg on the 400 meter relay, which got second. We got beat in both events by a team with brothers who went on to be world-class athletes. They were called the Ketchums. But I used that moment to propel myself. I got a scholarship to go to Texas State University, and so despite my counselor's recommendation, when I told him I wanted to major in business, and I had a plan, and I wanted to be a finance major. And when I was in high school, and telling him, just want to make sure that I'm checking all the boxes, he tried to counsel me out of it a little bit. So, and say, "Hey, why don't you just take a trade school? There's a good one. That might be a bit of a stretch for you." And fortunately, my parents had instilled in me drive, motivation, and the courage to, set goals and focus on them. I didn't listen to his advice. I got the scholarship. I went on to go to Texas State. I ran on a scholarship for 3 years. I was on the Texas State honor list because I medaled at the conference meet. But more importantly was the discipline that I learned from my dad about my goals. And so I'm sorry, so I was able to focus, and I got my finance degree, and I was I graduated in about 5 years, and I'll just go ahead and say I stuck around longer because I wanted to graduate with Janelle. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. But we actually graduated together in the summer of 1986, and so she graduated with an art degree. I graduated with my finance degree, and then we got married in that December. Um, I immediately got a job working at the Sonic Drive-In at first, and then 3 months later, I wound up working for the federal government. So I worked at the Internal Revenue Service. So I got my first job there. That during that time, I went back to Texas State and was driving back and forth. It was 40 miles each way, and I was working on my MBA, and I finished that in 1991. And from there, I met somebody when I was taking the MBA class. He introduced me to Dell Technologies, and that's where everything shifted in my life. I started working there, and my career has bounced back and forth between finance first, and then human resources. And today, I use both of those interchangeably in my consulting agency, which I started about 2 years ago, and it's called Beam Executive Advisors. And I chose the name Beam not only because of what Webster defines it as, a ray of light, support, to smile broadly. But more importantly, I chose it because of the letters. Those four letters have the initials of me and my brother's name: Brian, Elton, Anthony, and Michael. And so that is Beam Executive Advisors.
Yeah. Amazing, yeah, amazing story. And one of the things I really got from the book was what your parents said about never let someone else set the height of your bar. So, maybe you get counselors, you get friends or family telling you what you should do. Only you know your potential deep within your heart. So never letting someone else set the height of your bar. That was a great quote that I got as well. Before we jump into the next chapter, talk to me about the traumatic loss of your brother in 2006 and how that sort of unfolded.
It was a life-changing event that confirmed what we already knew about our bond. And so in 2005, Elton, henceforth to be referred to as Tweety, which is we still that's how he is remembered today. He became ill with three things that quickly kind of came to a head. So he had pancreatitis, he had Crohn's, and then he had to get a defibrillator. So all those things kind of happened pretty quickly. Just a little bit about him. The legacy he left was I'm the quietest one of all of them. He probably was the most outgoing. All of them are, are a little bit more loquacious than I am. But while he was in college and afterwards, he was just a magnet for people. There are people who he brought into our lives that I haven't seen in 15, 20 years, but they still know and stop by my mom and dad's house. And so they stopped by there because Tweety brought him there, and also the fact that he is actually his grave is less than a mile from my mom and dad's house. So I think he did that strategically, placed in. So he's there. He made sure they're going to come see him and then see my mom and dad. But it was a traumatic event. But we were there with him as brothers, with him when he passed, and there to support him. But we have tried to, you never get over something like that. But you always try to use some of the things that you learn going through it. And we are a three-legged stool now that really feels like we have an invisible fourth leg, but we are even closer now. We were really close then and before. We are quick to tell each other we love you in front of doesn't matter who, when we are very comfortable and confident in that. And we didn't realize that all the things that my parents instilled in us, how they would come to fruition. We didn't know we were a little different in terms of that and the relationship until we started bringing friends over, and we realized that not everybody has both parents. Not everybody has parents that were loving, supporting, and giving, and all that. And my parents not only did that for us, but they embraced everybody we brought in. And so there are hundreds of people who call my mama Charles. My dad, they look for them. Several men who are grown men who I grew up with they look to them for guidance to this day. So his loss, uh, although traumatic, has really reinforced what it is, and it just reminds us that no one is immune. And if things haven't happened, as my aunt Babe would say, well, just keep on living because time is waits for no one.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, and it just goes to show that the upbringing that your parents and the qualities and values they instilled with you, your brothers, really encapsulated in times of headwinds. And we're going to get into your headwinds as well because that's what the book is about too. So, but just to touch on a lighter note, chapter 3, talk about your travels. Talk to me about your travels, traveling the world, Mount Everest, Kilimanjaro. Talk to me about your travels.
Wow. And even in there, there's some humility. I was because I was an athlete. I as I stumbled, Janelle and I, gosh, in the early '90s, we went to visit her sister. Now, just for reference, Janelle is also an Air Force brat, not brat, I guess you will, but her father was in the Air Force, and she was born in Anchorage, Alaska. And so her sisters wound up getting stationed there because her husband got stationed there. And so we took that opportunity to go up and visit them because we wanted to go see, I wanted to go see Alaska. I heard how majestic it was. So I was excited to go. And we flew into Anchorage and they were stationed there in Fairbanks, which is, a bit further up north. And so one of the things we did was I said, let's take the train. We'll stop into Denali Park and we'll do some hiking there, and then we'll go on there. Well, that was the first time that we'd ever done anything like hiking. So we stopped in there at Denali Park, and we just got up one morning and said, hey, let's go do some hiking. And we wound up just falling in love with it. And I mean, it absolutely, the challenge of some of the hikes, the terrain, and ultimately the views that you would get. The vistas were just incredible, and we realized not everybody gets a chance to see these, and so that launched us into wanting to do more of that. So we have subsequently, all the places within the United States. Our favorite though is probably the Sedona area or the Four Corners, which is just a lot of red rocks, beautiful vistas, those kinds of things. But internationally, we have Mexico City. We have done Cusco. We have done Lima. We have done Santiago. So we've gone down South America. We've gone over to Easter Island. Done Machu Picchu. We've traveled to Amsterdam. We've traveled to Africa and Tanzania, and have done Kilimanjaro. We have traveled to Tokyo. We've traveled out to Kathmandu. So we did Kathmandu, and we wound up doing the Base Everest trek. So we didn't do the trek per se, but we did the trail and had got up to base camp, which is very humbling at 19,000 feet. And so we've done some things that have really helped us grow spiritually as well. And also, it just kind of helps reset and reminds you of what you have. A lot of those places, there was no running water. There was no air conditioning. There was no bed. There a lot of the things that we take for granted didn't exist there. And the people at every stop, who the porters or the people we met, one, they were so proud of what they had, and two, they would share it with us that you had no choice to reflect and think about kind of, some of the things we take for granted and how we might be viewed sometimes as condescending in some of the things that we do based on what we have. And so we learned so much from that, not only what we were afforded to in terms of the views and some of the lessons we learned about ourselves. You have a lot of time to think when you're hiking on a mountain at, you're 3 miles up, and your body is saying, what are you doing? And, I actually had two instances on Kilimanjaro and on the Everest hike where I was probably the fittest. But altitude doesn't care if you're the fittest. That's also can come back to haunt you. So I wound up not summiting on one of those, and it was probably the best piece of humble pie that I had when I didn't make it, and I was probably the fittest. And to let Janelle go and summit, and I had to turn around and I had to wait 24 hours for her to go and summit and come back, and I had a lot of time to reflect on what it means and what's important. So there was just a great lessons, and like I said, the porters, the people we met, all of those things from the helped shape my life, and the travels, the headwinds, the people I met in college, all of those things, and that's why I included them in the book, because they all help calibrate me and make me the person that I am.
Yeah. But have you been to Australia?
You know, it's on my list. That's one of the. We have not been to Antarctica, and we have not been to Australia, but we've been everywhere. And so I'm anxious to come down there, because I'm a foodie as well, and I have my Facebook page and love food, and I've heard and seen that you guys are bountiful with your cuisine.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we are the food capital, but we are not Texan barbecue. Talk about that. Talk about that barbecue. What food means to you? You got a Facebook page. People listening saying, "What is it about? How did it start?" And then we can jump into your journey with some of your hospitalizations and going through that. So, food and barbecue. What's it mean to you?
Food and barbecue. So you know what, and even that the food goes back to my roots. That's one of the things that we did as a family is when we got together, it usually was food that kind of is helping bringing us together. The actual love that went into preparing it, the sharing it, the eating it, and we did so and still do so in very large quantities. And so, barbecuing was something my dad did from as long as I can remember. And in 1995, I was in my 30s getting there, and I just bought a house. And I had been spending a lot of time with my dad, watching what he was doing on his pits. And he bequeathed me a pit, and it's a barrel pit, and I christened it Martha, and it's at my house now. And so Martha has been with me ever since 1995, and I use it. And I now have two other pits. So I have another one that's a real offset smoker that's called Fletcher. And then I have the egg type one. It's a Komodo Joe that I call R2D2. And so I have them named, and I cook, and I love to cook. It's therapeutic for me. I cook. I cook for no reason. 2 weeks ago, I was home alone, and I had the smoker filled with food, and people were saying, "What are you doing?" I said, "I just want to cook it," and I cook it, and my neighbors now look forward to me cooking because they bring stuff over. And this has been not only in Austin, but when I was in California and before I left, I've always been known as just loving to cook. And so this is how an evening might go. So I'll start firing up Martha, which is the smoke will start going down. I'll get a text from a neighbor about maybe a block or two away, and he says, "Hey, I smell Martha. What do you got on her?" And I said, "Well, I got a couple of things. Can I bring some stuff?" And yeah, they will bring it. I will season it. I will cook it. I will wrap it up, and then I'll put it back in some Tupperware. And then, honest to God, I'll text them and I'll say, "Your order is ready on Fence Post 2." And they will come by and get it. And I enjoy the smile on their face, and I enjoy the cooking. It's therapeutic for me. But I have so much fun cooking. I tell people, I use a little mop to moisten my meat sometime on there, and I'll jokingly tell people, I'll say, and they'll say, "What is the flavor? It's so good." I said, "It's the mop I use. It's one of the things." And I said, "Look," I said, you can mop a bad child and it'll taste good." So I really love food, and not only for what it does, it always brings people together. There's not been a time that I have barbecued where I have not met somebody different, new, who just stopped by. They smelled it. I've had somebody come up the street And he stopped and he told me, he says, I was down at the end of the street and Martin told me, I told him I smell this, and he said, it's Michael, he's up at the corner. And so he came by. So it opens doors, and I love people. I love to talk because I learned something from everybody. And so a lot of people have come through the fence just to look. And if you ever want to look at the food or whatever, I called it my food porn. But I do have that website. It's called Epicurious the One, and it's the THE and the number one. And I posted on there yesterday. So I cook not only barbecue, but I love to cook everything. So I bake. I don't do a whole lot of baking, but I grill. I just do a lot of food, and there's videos on there, and I love it, and it's therapeutic, but it also brings people together.
I'll put a link in the description as well. Me and my wife are foodies, and one of my bucket lists would be to definitely come to your place in Austin, Texas, and have some real Texan barbecue. We do watch the TV shows as well, but yeah, when you're from Australia, America is the bucket list, especially barbecue, and I'm sure Americans, Australia is the bucket list too, so we're connected in that way.
Anybody that comes here, that comes to Austin, I will. That's an open invitation. I will know. I actually, when I was in California before coming back to Texas in 2014, I was gone for 12 years. And one of the things I missed was barbecue. And so when I came back and was able to take off a year, I went on this barbecue tour, and I created a list. I have a spreadsheet that has 34 different barbecue places on it that I've been to some of them multiple times, and I have them ranked. And these are the 5-star. These are who, and I have by not only the total experience, but by different, whether it's brisket, whether it's the chicken or whatever. And I have that, and there's still 21 more places that are on that list that are in the queue I haven't been to.
It's your barbecue bucket list. Awesome. Now we can talk about food for forever, but I do want to jump into what the book's about, and jump to chapter 5, which is your journey back in 2002. You worked for Dell Technologies, but yeah, what happened? Fast forward to the spring of 2008 with your first hospitalization. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Absolutely, and it is the genesis, and I never thought I'd be here, and this could get emotional, but it's real, and it's a lot of it is how things. Just because you don't know something doesn't mean it isn't already planned and it's going to happen. So I accepted a job at Amgen in 2002. I was working at Dell, and I was approached by a job with the BioNTech Amgen, and it was a great opportunity because of the company. And so we left. Janelle and I. She left her family, and I left mine, and we moved out there, not knowing that. That move would save my life. We moved in 2002, and in 2006, I started having some medical issues with my vision and with dexterity, and I actually collapsed at work, coming out of the elevator after working out at the company gym, and I staggered right straight down the hallway to my office, and I couldn't remember Janelle's phone number. I was disoriented, and I was able to hit the redial button for my boss, who was in the adjacent building. One of the blessings about something like that happening and being employed at an incredible company, healthcare company, is that doctors came out everywhere, and I was rushed to the hospital. They were performing tests, and they were saying that there's some pressure. Something was called some pressure on my eye. I went to the ophthalmologist, and then they diagnosed. He said, "Look, I don't know what's going on, but there's some pressure. I want you to go to UCLA, Ronald Reagan Center in LA." And I knew that something was up when he said, "Oh, and you're going to be seeing the chief neurosurgeon." And that's when I said, "Okay, this might not be, something that this could be something serious." And so when we got there, they ran some tests, and I was starting to be even more and more light sensitive and disoriented. And I went in on a Friday to see them, and he said, "Hey, we just ran some more tests, and something's going on in your head. There could be an infection that's putting pressure on your eye." This was a Friday, and they said, "Monday, we need to do a craniotomy," which is basically cutting open your head. And I was like, "Oh, okay, this is serious." And over the weekend, while I was away before I came back, things got really bad. And by the time I got back there, I had double vision, and fortunately, the timing that they had recommended was right on, because otherwise, they said pressure probably could have really just blinded me. So they did the craniotomy on me, and it took about 2.5, 3 months for them to get the biopsy and diagnose what it was. But during that time, I actually lost about 25 pounds as my body was starting to eat itself, and they didn't know what it was. They ruled out sarcoidosis, they ruled out cancer, tumors, and a bunch of things. And they finally found out what it was, and we drove back into UCLA for them to give me the diagnosis. And that chief neurosurgeon came out, and he said, "You have something really, really rare." And then I said, "Oh, yeah." And he said, "No, it's called idiopathic hypertrophic cranial pachymeningitis." And he says, "We have 4 cases here, and we have an 8 that we've ever seen." And I was like, my mom said I was special, but I really didn't want to be this special. And I just kind of okay, everybody's got something. Even then, I had the attitude throughout I was always optimistic, always thinking, okay. I've always told people it's not what happens to you, how you respond, and I've also told people to wait to worry, and so I had to really kind of internalize a lot of the feedback and lectures and things that I had said. So they began a rigorous process of treatment, which started with chemotherapy, and it migrated to what I am now on, which is every 6 weeks I get a Remicade infusion. So it's I'm better now, and it's gotten to be a routine, but it's a humbling thing when you go from feeling like you're Superman and to, well, wow, wait a minute, there's kryptonite is real. And so I've been dealing with that, but it's been probably the best blessing I've had, because I've gotten to the point where I've recovered, and I forget that I have to have an infusion. But when they call me to remind me, it reminds me of how quickly things can change. And so I take the opportunities every time I go into having my infusion, which is about a 3-hour treatment. I always sit next to somebody, or I always approach it like I do life, very optimistically and jovial. And I try to find somebody and have a conversation. Maybe I can say something that will help somebody else and will uplift them. And so it's been a blessing in disguise, and everybody's got something, and that's my something. And so I have dealt with that throughout, and that happened in 2008 when I started that process. And then in 2019, I was hospitalized again back here in Austin when I had a bout of the pneumonia and bronchitis, and I had a lot of time again alone in the hospital. And one of the things I started reflecting on is, what do you want to do with your life? Do you really want to keep working like this? What's really important? And I came out of that, and after recovering from medical leave and going back to work 2 months after I returned, I just stepped away from corporate and said, "Hey, look, I want to do things my way, and I want to work with people I want to work with. I want to work with industries that I want to work with." And so I started looking at management consulting and joined a firm there. Fast forward to 2021, I had started my business in 2020, the fall of 2020, and in January of 2021, my insurance changed, and the new provider had never heard of my medical condition, and so there was some back and forth between them and our medical advisors about, what is it? Why does it cost $9,000? And so instead of getting it 6 weeks, 6 weeks turned into 7 weeks, turned into 8 weeks, turned into 9 weeks. And just about a year ago today, right now, is when I was starting to lose sight again in my left eye, because I was 4 weeks past getting my treatment. So we were actually 1 week away from the Texas snowstorm that happened last year, where I went almost completely blind and was home alone, and started that whole sequence. Started 59 Prime. I didn't know what was waiting for me, but we were getting ready, or spiritually something was getting me ready for 59 Prime.
So what happened with Snowvid 2021? You talk about in the book there was a massive ice storm, but what happened and how did that unfold from there? And I know, thank you for sharing the previous stuff as well, and we can go back on that, but talk to me about the Texas ice storm.
Well, and this is actually almost a year ago today. It happened on February 12th of last year is when it started coming in, and this time last year, the temperatures were starting to drop, and Janelle left Austin to come down to where I am at now with her parents to make sure they would be ready for it. And she knew that I was already starting to go through withdrawals and losing some sight in my eye, my left eye, because of I didn't get the Remicade treatment, but it was scheduled for the 12th, my infusion. And so I said, hey, look, I'm getting ready to get it. I'm just going to stay here and get it, and it'll be okay. Neither of us knew the extent of the snowstorm that Texas would face. And that morning on Friday, the 12th, as I was getting ready to go in for my treatment, the weather had gotten bad. But and then the predictions were starting to come in that this was going to be really, really bad. But I got a message that morning saying my infusion was canceled because of the weather. So that was week 5. So instead of getting something every 6 weeks, I was now on the 11th week. And I was probably down to about 30% vision in my left eye. And then that night, home alone, is when the power went out, and I was there, and then the temperatures dropped inside. I'd spend that whole weekend in the house, just trying to keep warm. Temperatures were below 40 degrees Fahrenheit inside the house. I was, the good thing was I had my my survival stuff from the trekking. So I had on my North Face, I had on gloves, I had on everything, but my eye was really starting to deteriorate, and I had been in constant contact with my rheumatologist who were treating me, and he had prescribed and had that Friday once it was canceled. He had started me on 60 milligrams of prednisone, which to hopefully try to stop and mitigate it. It didn't work, and I realized, Michael, that Saturday night when I was trying to open a can of chili to cook on the gas stove, and I got it open, but it took me 6 tries to get the spoon in the can, that this was really bad, and I couldn't see. And so I called the doctor again, and he said, "Look, we're gonna go ahead and get you to the hospital, and if you can just hang on until Monday." And sure enough, I made it. Then the challenge was getting there, because the 2 feet of snow had built up, and luckily my neighbor across the street had a 4-wheel Jeep, and he drove me to the emergency room to start the exact same procedure that I had at UCLA 13 years ago, which started with an IV infusion of prednisone, 3,000 milligrams over 3 days. So your body normally makes about 5 milligrams naturally of prednisone, just to kind of help with water absorption. And so they were giving me 1,000 of that for 3 days to try to stop it. But when he dropped me off, I spent the first 10 hours in the emergency room there waiting, because the snowstorm was wreaking havoc across Texas. The power was out everywhere, massive amounts. The temperature was, at 0. And people were having accidents, breaking their legs, cars, and things like that. So there was a lot of people ahead of me in line, and I actually took 2 business calls in the lobby, and the people on the call didn't not even know it. I was just taking it, thinking, okay, I know what it is, and I know it, and just got to be patient. And they finally got me in and did another MRI, and yes, it was had reactivated the sleeping giant that was the Pacquiao meningitis had started to have some activity. So they wheeled me in for the MRI. I was talking to the attendant and just about the procedures, and I'd had so many before. I was saying, you're going to use contrast, and things evolved, and we wound up talking about food. And we had a great conversation. And that night in the hospital, first night in the hospital, it was so crowded that I spent the first night in a gurney in the hall with an IV. And I remember before going to sleep, I just called Janelle and said, "Hey, I'm okay." I said, I'm in the hospital. So I said, "We do have heat in there." But then I checked my phone and I looked and I saw that that gentleman had actually joined my Facebook page just because of that conversation. The next night, they got me a room and I called Janelle and said, "Hey, honey, I'm fine." I said, I'm looking out on the 5th floor and it's snowy. I said, I'm fine. Nurse comes in and she says, "Mr. Francis?" And I said, "Yeah." And she says, "They said you're so bubbly and everything. I just had to meet you." I said, "Well, I'm blessed. I'm here. I'm able to get medical treatment." She says, "Well, I got some bad news for you. And we're going to see." And I said, "Well, what do you got?" And she says, "Well, the snow and the temperatures have frozen our septic systems. We're going to need you to use the bathroom in a wastebasket." And I said, "Hey, I've been trained for this on Kilimanjaro." I said, "Machu Picchu and all that. So I'm trained for this. What else you got?" And she started laughing and said, "I can't believe it." I said, "Hey, you know what? You got to play the hand you're dealt. Everybody else is." So, but she did that. So, yeah. So that started the whole, what would wind up being resulting in an 8-month ordeal during which I really started writing 59 Prime. And something was with me making me do this. The book is not of me, and something I could have created on my own. So I know that there was some divine intervention, something prompted me, and I didn't fight it. I just kind of went with it. I unplugged from social media, and I gave myself the time to have the clarity to just let my thoughts flow. And I'm so glad I did. But I wrote the book. I think a month after it, I picked the title. Something told me to get the website, 59 Prime. I did all those things not knowing that it was going to evolve to this, and it came to fruition. And as I was working with the editor at the end of 2021, he was telling me, "Well, how much do you want to charge for this, and how much?" I said, "Look," I said, "I never thought I was going to write a book." I said, "If I sell one book," I said, "that's more than I ever thought." I said, so I guess my revenue target is $12.99, and that's what I charged for the book, because he was saying, well, I said, "Look, $12.99 makes sense to me." I said, it's not the money, it's the message. I said, that's about, I said, if you think about it, I said, that's about 2 pages for every year of my life. I said, it's about 10 cents a page. I said, you can get a pizza for, about the same as that. I said, hopefully there's more in here. And I've always been a person who is focused on quality over quantity. And it's a small book. It's not a novel by any means, but there's a lot of life in that book. And all those things, those chapters, those 10 chapters collectively help tell the story. And also some of the lessons I've learned, there's no need to take that with me. And that's been the impetus of 59 Prime. I have not... I have a website that I put up because I wanted people to maybe look at it or understand kind of what was behind it before they bought it. I didn't want it to be just a sell. And it's selling on Amazon too. I've only been on Amazon once. December 3rd is when I went on, because they told me I had to check and see if the payment process was working. And so I have no idea what's going on Amazon, and I don't really care. It's not good we're human, and it's not good to read your own press, good or bad. And so I wrote it hoping it would touch people's lives, and that's that. So I don't know, but I'm blessed.
Yeah, I'll do the best I can to get the word out there. So for my audience out there, 59 Prime, you got a copy there, Michael, to hold up? I know we're not finished yet. We're still going to go through the book, but just midway.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. I like the cover. Perfect. One thing I want to just ask you a question. So when you did go to hospital, did the doctor come out and said, "Michael, you've got a detached retina in your left eye and you need emergency surgery"? Is that right?
That's absolutely. So that I just told you about the first day. So that first stay was when I talked about me having to use the bathroom in the basket in the trash. So I was in a hospital 4 days then. I got out, and Janelle came back, and that was the weekend. And I was supposed to get my Remicade on Monday. Well, I got it and it didn't help. And so they said, you need to go see an ophthalmologist, your ophthalmologist. And I went to see him on a Tuesday, and he did the same, Michael, he did the same thing that my ophthalmologist did 13 years ago when he looked at my scans. I saw him push back from the desk, and I saw that look on his face, and then I saw him leave. And I said, okay, I've seen this before. This is not good. He came back and he said, Michael, how long have you been working? You've been driving? You've been reading? You've been doing stuff? How long have you been doing it like this? I said, like what? I said, about since the beginning of the year. And he said, I know you just got out of a hospital 4 days ago, but you've got a fully detached retina in your left eye. And I said, okay. And so what we need to do, he says, you need to have emergency surgery. And I said, okay, let's do it. So 7 days after getting out of the other hospital, I had surgery at a different hospital to reattach my retina. I had 3 tears, 1 major and 2 minor. Unfortunately, the 1 major was at the bottom. So it was the one that held it's supposed to keep your eyeball from rolling around. And he said, I don't know how you were driving. I don't know how you were doing all this. And I said, I didn't think about it. And I was also on the steroids too. So I was, he says, you're on, he says, you've got over 4,000 milligrams. I said, yeah. I said, everybody's got something. I said, so what do we need to do? And so we did that. But that was the first surgery of now I've had 4 that I've been under anesthesia for. And then I have 3 that were laser in office. So I am, my last one was in December. And I went in and had my, had to go in and get cataracts now because of the surgery there and all the surgeries I had over the course of the 8 months. I had cataracts in my left eye, and I went back to the doctor, and after that, and he said, your cataracts, we've got those. Now you just go see your normal ophthalmologist, the original one who backed away from the table. So I saw him, and he said, man, they did a fantastic job on your eye, your retina and everything's that. And I said, well, Dr. Young is fantastic. And he says, he says, you now got detached on your right eye. And so it was in December that they found out that I got it. And I said, you know what? This is, I said, well, what do we do about it? He says, we got to do laser surgery right now. And I can zap these things. And I said, okay, let's do it. Janelle was with her parents here, and I called her and said, hey, honey, they say I got to tell somebody because it's a surgery and sign off. But here's what's going on. And I think it's 197 laser zaps later, they did it, and they completed it. And I sat in that office afterwards thinking I came in to get fitted for my new prescription and wound up having surgery. But it all, the one thing that came out of there, Michael, is I leveraged what was in 59 Prime. All the things I'd been saying, I was thinking. I was actually, okay, yeah, it's not what happens to you, how you respond, and you got to be. And so that's when I really started really, really getting excited about 59 Prime going out to everybody. It helped me, and I believe it could help others.
Reminds me of David Goggins when he talks about the cookie jar. I'm not sure if you know who David Goggins is, but great motivational and inspiration to people around the world. But yeah, going back to your past and pointing out the hard things makes the present easier, is what he says.
Yeah, and also, I think the best time to talk about those things and your faith and that is when you're in the midst of them, because once they pass, they tend to dissipate a little bit. They don't take on quite the significance. But if you're in the middle of them, that's probably the best time.
Yeah.
And I found that to be true.
And the only easy day was yesterday, I guess, everything in the past. But I want to jump through chapter 6, and you talk about hope and inspiration. And I want to talk about a couple of the great quotes that you wrote in there as well that really sort of stood out for me. One was number 6. You spoke about not all friends need or should be considered close friends. Develop barriers of entry, preserve, protect, and manage your core confidants, the ones who are with you always. What does that mean to you?
It means that, again, it goes back to my statement about quality over quantity. It doesn't mean that it has to be a small group, but the quality of that group, it needs to be firm, and it needs to be tested, and it needs to be people who are with you because they're with you, and there's a reciprocal kind of relationship where that as I started writing 59 Prime, one of the things I wanted to do was to take the opportunity to thank a lot of people who have played a role in my life. And so there is a section in there. There's two sections in there. One is I call it my go-to crew, the people, they're men and women who have been there with me. I think there's 30, maybe 30 that I haven't, who've been there with me through some of these journeys and all that. And they're really my core. And then I have another section that's called professional colleagues, now considered lifelong friends. And I wanted to take that opportunity from my 30 years of work. There's a lot of people. And I started jotting down names and names and names. And when I finally was finished, my editor, Mel Cohen, as he was putting together, he said, "I've never seen anything like this, Michael." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You have over 200 people that you got." I said, "I didn't count." I said, "But these are people." And I wanted to do that. So that, so again, it's not it doesn't mean by quantity, it doesn't mean that they're small, but that group needs to be tested. They're people who you would seek out, and people who understand and know and are in constant contact. Some of the people that I have on there, I haven't seen or talked to in 15, 20 years, 30 years, not 30 years, but quite a while. And so another beautiful gift to me from writing the book was now I have them reaching out to me because they didn't realize how important they were to me. And I wanted them to know that. And I wanted it in print, and I wanted them to be acknowledged. And so it's reopened those doors. And so again, for me, a blessing of being able to tell people how much they mean, because sometimes you don't realize it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And a lot of times people write a book for a business card, but you've actually wrote your book for what's the word? Not an envelope, but for an olive branch for people back in the past to say, "Hey, this is my story. This is what I've been up to as well." And it's a sort of a good catch up on your life for where you are now at 59 Prime. Another great inspirational quote I got from the book, and I love this one. I absolutely do. I'm going to turn it into a poster. It is, "Never dim your light because it's too bright for some. If they choose to remain in your life, then kindly recommend that they need to wear sunglasses."
It's true. I mean, think about it, and you may they you know, and you if they want to stay, then they need to know that you are you, and you're not going to change. And if that's going to bother them, they basically need to try to adapt it. And so it was really a nice way. Yeah, the shades were really powerful way to say, "Hey, I'm going to shine my light." And so if it's too bright for you, it's you may need to figure out some other way.
Wear some shades. Yeah, if you want to stay, wear the shades. It's fantastic, because we all have a certain light in ourselves, and we're all on a different life path or light path. And sometimes we dim our own light for the convenience of other people. But really what we need to do is get to that next level of brightness, because we know that there are other people I've got a great quote I use in my coaching program, which is, you don't know who's going to be on your chessboard in the next 12 to 24 months if you make that next move. So it's all about continuing to shine your light and speaking your own truth as well. But I won't go any further than that. And another one, last quote I got from chapter 6, which was a special one to me, which was, "Aspire to change the world by just being you. Even if you fall short, you'll have nothing left on the playing field. I'm aware of someone who achieved worldwide eminence in approximately 33 short years." Who is that person for those playing at home?
That person is Jesus, and what he went through. And it is, I am a spiritual person. I'm not somebody who's going to get up behind a pulpit, because that's just not how I communicate. But I understand and believe that there is a force. I've had so many just aha moments and things that have reflections that have come to me and helped me throughout this process to reinforce what I already knew, there were times when I went out on when I had to take off work. I was working for myself and just starting, so I didn't have much money, and so things always seemed to fall in place for me. And there was one time I had $47 in my account. I didn't tell Janelle. I had $47, and we had a mortgage payment coming up, and I was, you know, I was bad. I was beyond the point of wait to worry. I was worrying, and I just kept being okay. Let's figure out what you can do. I woke up 2 days before that payment was due, and saw there was a deposit in my account, and it was almost $5,000. And I was thinking, what is this? How is this? Come to find out, there was an error I made last year on my taxes, and the Internal Revenue Service caught it and reversed it and sent me a refund. So people say, well, that was luck. That's not luck. That's, I had so many of those kinds of moments that just helped me through it. It was writing this book. Everything was cleared for me to do it, and I knew it wasn't me. I mean, I was able to move in with my mom and dad for a while, and I actually set up my office in their home, away from home. I unplugged from social media and just had such clarity of thought. But I knew it wasn't me. I mean, I knew that these thoughts, this peace, my approach now, it was all pre-planned, just waiting for me to catch up to it. And so I really feel strongly about sharing that. I even have my website. There is I'm not somebody who's been a vocal kind of, I like to get up and do presentations, but I have, and I do them now on a regular basis. But for something like this that has a message, I'm all in for that. I've been fortunate to, as soon as I was able to recover and get back to a point where I could relaunch Beam, I did so on LinkedIn end of September. I just said, "Hey, I'm coming back." Within 2 weeks, I had 4 clients, all referrals. Two were in the biotech industry, which is the industry I wanted to be in. One was with a nonprofit, and one was with another one who makes air purifiers. All industry that I wanted to be in, all referrals. That's not. So if I'm an example of what it's bigger than us, and there's it's about faith, and I'm just trying to be a messenger of that.
Yeah, they say that coincidences is God's way of staying anonymous, and I think we all know that true. Because those things that happen to us internally, it's very hard to express, but you know the truth of the matter in the story. So thank you for sharing that as well. And yeah, for people listening, again, this book is might be short, but god damn, it's deep. And it's not the length of a book, it's the depth of the book, and this certainly goes deep as well. I want to jump into the next chapter, which you make a lot of career and life lessons. And some of the things that stood out for me was number 3, you cannot outsource your legacy, so get busy creating that. What does legacy mean for you?
Legacy means the impact that you have, not just from not from a professional standpoint, but from a personal. What do you want? And do you want people to remember you? I think that's a question that also needs to be asked, because there's some people who will say, I'm just here and I'm gone. And I think that each of us is a gift. I mean, our life is a gift, and we get to choose, what do you want to do with it? And do you want to try to use it to amplify something yourself, or what? And for me, it is leaving something positive here for somebody to let know I was here and had an impact and actually could change. And it may not even be immediate. It could be, 2 generations from now. I wrote, I've been blogging ever since, because it hasn't stopped. And so on my webpage, there's a drop down called Michael's Musings. And I, aside from the My Thoughts that you have in there, the 7, since then, I've written another 16. then and they're on the page in there, and one of them is called 2230, and I titled it that because I say that's the year by my best guess that we will be able to say that racism no longer exists in the year 2230. And I talk about I hope that that my great great grandniece will be able to look at that point in time and open up 59 Prime and look up to the heavens at me. And I hope my spirit is alive to acknowledge that we've turned a corner on racism by 2023. And there's other ones in there like that. But I think it's about that. And not everybody's there, but I believe that you can change people's lives, and it's not just been me. It's been my family too. I mean, my brothers, all of us have the same approach, and we've tried to be open. We tried to be giving. We tried to be encouraging. We tried to be loving and show people what we've experienced. Some of them haven't. So I think we have an obligation to show this. You can, and here's what it can do. And so that's kind of what I mean by that.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple last questions before we sort of wrap up as well. Another great lesson that you put in the book, and this one is definitely a poster. I can definitely see this as a poster. Sometimes we have to fall off the train only to realize we've been traveling on the wrong set of tracks.
Yeah, and I think we all can do that, and I've done that in personally and professionally. Sometimes and you can get latched onto things, and my experience, and when I just made the hard stop of changing careers from working for a corporation to working with them now, that was when I realized, okay, wait a minute, it's not me. I'm not broken. I'm not delivering. I'm not that. It's just I'm now in the wrong. It's a different point in time. Before that, I was working for Advanced Micro Devices, and I coming back to Texas, and I realized this is maybe not what I want to do. I took action, and I said, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to do this. And I worked with them, and I had a package, and I stepped away, and that was on a Friday, and I was walking out. I turned my badge in. I was walking out here in Austin, was going to get in the car and drive down to see my parents and figure out, okay, Michael, so you just quit your job. What are you going to do? Well, I went to my car, and I grabbed the car door, and the phone rang in the parking garage. And it was a colleague of mine who I knew at Amgen, who was now working for a company called AECOM. And she called me, and she said, Michael, I know you got a job. I know you're not looking for a job, but I'm working for this fantastic company, and they are looking for an executive chief of staff. And I told them, I said, I got the perfect person, but he's got a job. And I told her, I said, Sharon, just 5 minutes ago, I turned my badge in. And I went on and accepted that job. So it's
wow.
These are not, like I said, they're not accidents. And like you said, they're just waiting for us to catch up to them. And when you acknowledge them and talk about them, I mean, that makes it real to people, and it also reaffirms it to yourself. So that's why I tell these stories, because they're true and they happen to me, and I can share it with you and explain it to you, but I can't make you believe or understand it. And that's really not my job, but I'm gonna tell you this because I want you to know that. And so I have an obligation to tell the truth, my truth. And I don't have an obligation on how to manage it, how you receive it.
Yeah, awesome. Now, I want you to get the book, and I want you, Michael, to go to chapter 9 where it says, My Hope. Talk to me about the last page. You say, My Hope. Can you do a quick little reading of Life is Circular from there, where you talk about your hope? Or if you know it off by heart, tell us, what is your hope?
My hope for, and I want to go here because I want to read it. Which page are you on? So, there it is, 121. So yeah. Life is circular. Oh yeah, okay. And I'll read it, and then maybe I'll just try to see if I can.
Just to finish off.
Okay. Life is circular. The ancient Chinese philosophy of yin and yang has merit. Life is incredibly non-dualistic, meaning that there is something in everything. There's good. In the good there's bad, and in the bad there's good. In the end, Everything in life has balance. Find yours and relish it. Um, that's a deep one that came to me as I was getting in the final stages of that. That it aligns with several other kinds of philosophies out there that you know that things come back to you, and it may not come back to you when you want it and how you want it, but you got to put positive things out there in the universe, and do that. I think we all have an obligation to share our experiences, not just the positive ones, but also the negative ones. So 59 Prime wasn't meant to be. If you read it, it's not all inspirational in terms of uplifting. There's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of struggles in there. But all of those things define who you are, and I think you have to go through those things. One of the musings I wrote is titled something, because everybody's got one, and we should share those and be cognizant that no matter how bad things are, there is always somebody who's dealing with something worse, always. And so keep things in perspective, and try to shine your light and for others, because you never know. You might be that last rope, lifeline, or word of encouragement for somebody who is going through something really, really bad, and you might be the last person they talk to before they make a decision to do something. And so if you keep that train of thought and try to minimize self-pity. I mean, we all go through stuff. If you can minimize that, man, I'll tell you what, you just seem to glow. And I've had people tell me, I've always been uplifting and kind of people kind of gravitate toward me because of that. But even more so now, after 2020, 21, what I went through, when I came out on the other side, all those little dots were connected for me, and I realized that there's so much more to life, and a lot of it is working and meeting people like you. I would not have ever met you had I ever written 59 Prime.
Or the other question is, I would have never found you if you never wrote 59 Prime, as I run the world's largest free book summary website. But I think Gandhi said it correct. He said, your life is your message, and your life, Michael, is this message in this book. And I want to leave the audience with, go out and buy this book. Where can people reach you, find you? So you're on LinkedIn, Michael. You've got your food and barbecue thing on Facebook. But if people want to get a copy of this book, what's the best place you would direct them to?
I can. You can go to www.59prime.com. So that is the official website, and from there you can learn more about the book, learn more about me. You can follow me on Michael's Musings, which is one of basically a blog I do that has inspirational and just my thoughts on life. You can purchase the book there. One thing that I have been able to do and have been blessed to do is that those coming through that buy it there, I manage the ones that are purchased there, that I wanted to come to me, and so I have been doing fulfillment, but I have been blessed to be able to write in every single one of them. I know that I've sold over 250, probably close to 300 that have come through there, and I've signed every one of those. And that to me is special, especially when it comes from friends and colleagues. I'm able to write a special note in those. So, but go to www.59prime and read about the book, and if you like what you're reading and it resonates with you, which I hope it does, then feel free to buy it, and hopefully at some point in time I'll be able to sign it for you.
Absolutely, yeah, and thank you again, Michael, for putting the book out there. And yeah, I've read a lot of books in my time, as you know, and it's probably one of the best books I've read on a memoir. But just going back to your roots and showing the foundations of how your life grew like a tree it is, and the fruit that you are sort of letting us all eat at the moment is from your struggles and the 59 years of growing your life to the point where you're sharing your message. So thank you very much for that. And congratulations. This is the longest podcast I've ever done at 1 hour and 30 minutes. So I think it's a good time to wrap through there anymore and people know the full story. So go out there, follow Michael on social, check out 59prime.com. Buy the book. And Michael, yeah, thank you for being such an inspirational guest and all the
Thank you
great
so
work
much,
you've done.
Michael, for reaching out to me. I really appreciate it, and you've made this a very enjoyable experience. And I'm gonna look you up when I come to Australia. And if you're ever in Austin, you know how to find me.
I'll be there. I'll be knocking on the door. Don't worry about that. Well, Michael, have a great day, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you so much.
Stay blessed. Remain blessed.
No worries. All right.